Yeah. Hello to all live pharma coalition, that is the LPC audience and viewer, and LPC-68 global leadership speaker and the panelist, as well as our the moderator. As you may know, every week Sunday at 11 a.m. as per the Indian Standard Time (IST) is the fixed time for the weekly LPC online discussion session. This LPC online pharma discussion session is for the all pharmaceutical, life sciences, and healthcare industry people from all the departments and sub-department across the globe. Also, the LPC has started its the commercial arm, that is the LPC mentor program for the LPC registered member to have a customized learning and sharing platform every month, second and the third Sunday at 5 p.m. as per the IST. So the last Sunday of the last month, or the third Sunday, that we had the first LPC mentor program at the 5 p.m. IST. Kindly do the registration and to be a part of to fulfill your need of customized learning on the skill required in the pharmaceutical, life sciences, and the healthcare industry. Second LPC mentor programs that will be on the next month, this month, on 22nd August at 5 p.m. So before we start today's LPC 68 Global Leadership Session, I would like to share a past, current, and the future plan, current numbers of the LPC, and aim, objective, mission, vision for the pharmaceutical company, life sciences, and healthcare industry across the globe. So here, I will just like to share my screen, right? So hope it will be visible to all of you. Right. So, as welcome on India's largest online pharma discussion platform, that is a live pharma coalition learning and sharing platform. As we have a consistency every week till 68 episode now for the live pharma coalition, as well as the people reach of all 4 videos in a 1 month on Facebook. It reaches to 21,000 plus. That's why it has become the India's largest online pharma discussion platform. And from the day one, that our objective for the live pharma coalition, that is very clear. That is learning and sharing platform for everyone. As you may be aware about, the journey begins for the pharma learning and sharing on a May 2020 with my college mate as well as seniors, juniors of the pharmaceutical industry. And these online pharma learnings and the sharing discussions, experts, we got it along with me, and every day, every week, every month, it's becoming the larger and larger. Currently, we do have a 70 plus pharmaceutical company as well as the institutions under the live pharma coalitions, those who takes the part of it. 180 plus speakers, moderator and panelists are there into WhatsApp group, and people reach what we get it in the form of the number because of the bifurcations of weekly. It has been given the direction to our the speaker as well as the audience. Week one is very clear that the sales team, they come, they learn from the, or the leadership team along with the marketing global team, international marketing, learning the people they are coming, and they are like taking a benefit of our the expertise, which has been very experienced people, those who contribute to all the learners. Week three is for the young leadership, where the marketing and the product managers they comes and they learn it. Week four is for the academic, where all the students of MBA, BPharm, they comes and they learn it. Week five is for the woman leadership, where the woman, those who has in the eager to become a leader into a pharmaceutical industry. So different leadership discussions for the different audience and the different viewers on weekly basis. Here we have a 28 people team with the executives, executive members, and the members. Here are the three executives along with me, Mr. Ashish Verma, Mr. Yashwant Mishra, and Mr. Vinod Vaswani from the day one. They take care of it. Here we have our the second week team, that is the young global executive members team. So they takes care of the complete the global sessions on a second week. Here along with me there will be Mr. Praveen Pandey. He takes care of the global executive members along with Hitesh sir, Saurabh Mishra, and Ashish sir. So these are the those who are like our LPC second week global executive members, those who takes care of the global sessions. As I given the backup of the 20,000 LPC discussions Facebook page people reach, 5,000 Facebook engagement of all 4 videos in a month, and 2,000 the people that who takes part of onto LPC YouTube channel as a subscriber as well as the viewer both. Now we have initiated this program, already discussed. This will be on the 22nd. Do part of it. Well, really thanks to our the LPC 67, the leadership Facebook and YouTube audience, those who were there live, as well as to whom this video it has been watched, and got a huge number of the 3.2 as 3.2 thousand as the people those who has engaged through the session. Now coming to the LPC 68 global leadership, here we have the nice topic for today's discussions. That is the Philippines, the country of 7,109 islands, and here we will have a KD sir along with the Pat and Saurabh Mishra. He will be like the speaker, those who will be talk about it. Here, a short way, I will just like to introduce along with me. Unfortunately, either sir he couldn't able to join it. Along with me, there will be two panelists, those who will be taking care of the entire sessions. Mr. Praveen Pandey, he is a DGM in the integrates currently working with that. Mr. Ashish Srivastava, he is also the his own the company he is running. So over to you, both of you, for the further proceedings. Yes, Ashish.
Uh, Thank you, Raman. My pleasure to be a part of LPC 68 again. And I also welcome aboard all the distinguished members, including KD sir and Pratt and Saurabh, who is also going to be, besides a permanent feature, he's also going to be the speaker. I'll just let you know briefly about myself. I myself has devoted more than 30 years in pharma industry. I started my career as a medical representative in Servier/Serdia, joined Ranbaxy as a manager, regional manager, and then my international journey begins in the year 1995, where I was stationed in Russia for 3 to 4 years for Cadila Pharma. After having worked with Cadila Pharma in CIS markets, I joined Lupin, where I was looking after almost entire ROW, which means I was looking after Africa, I was looking after Latin America, Southeast Asia. And subsequently, in my last assignment as a professional, I was global head institutions in Novartis, where I was looking globally almost each and every market in the globe. At some point of inflection, I decided that enough of professional, it's a time that I should be on my own. And I started my own consultancy services. Right now, I'm engaged in consulting my various clients from India and abroad for regulated markets like United States and Europe, and partly premium Latin American markets like Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. I will talk about KD sir a little later. I just thought I will introduce myself to the audience, and I now give it to Praveen, and then probably we go on with the session.
Good morning to all. At each Sunday we are meeting and we are going to talk something different. Today we are going to talk about Blue Star of Southeast Asian market, and we have different level experienced people. Of course, KD sir is Mr. Pratt, Mr. Saurabh, and me. I am Praveen Pandey, at present holding position of Deputy General Manager with Dragpur Limited, and I am looking after entire Africa, Asian market, Latin market, and CIS. So I'll just move with one introduction with Mr. Pratt, and then I'll get back. So Mr. Pratt, born brought up as a Filipinos, and he is offering 12 years experience in regulatory, compliance and audits. At present he is holding Chief International Officer in A Global Care. It's a Philippines-based company. Mr. Pratt has traveled almost 20 countries, and he is having of numerous of regulatory audits and compliance. He is able to register almost 150 drugs, 50 food supplements, 20 medical devices, and 50 plant sites in Philippines market. Provided regulatory assistance is emerging as well as established in pharmaceutical companies. So welcome, Mr. Pratt. We would like to hear you after introduction part of all speakers. And behalf of LPC, I'm thanking you for you have managed your time, and yes, many viewers are going to just hear today. Then our third speaker, Mr. Saurabh. He is an executive member also for LPC. Mr. Saurabh, by educational credential, he is a pharmacist graduate, and after that he has done masters in management for international business. Just additionally, he has joined some diploma in the international relations. He brings almost 9 years plus experience in pharmaceutical industry, and that is whole and soul for international business as business development. Uh, Almost 15 countries he has traveled, where it's considered Middle East, North Africa, and Southeast Asian countries. Mr. Saurabh had been based in two different locations also out of India. That was one is Sri Lanka, and second is was last in Philippines. At present, he is holding Assistant General Manager post of International Business. He's looking after South business development things in Southeast Asia. So welcome, Mr. Saurabh also. And from here, I'll just leave this to Ashish sir to introduce KDC.
My pleasure, Praveen. It always takes immense pride to introduce eminent speakers like Mr. K.D. Sharma, who has not only been a personal help in my career, but also he is a distinguished kind of a celebrity in our pharma circuit in international market. So just to start with, he is a president and a director of international operations for Southeast Asia and Microlabs. And he has more than 40 years of experience, and it is no less than a joy when you travel such a journey, when you start with a bright basics like a soldier in the army. You start as a medical representative in pharmaceutical field, and he started his career as a medical representative in Alembic, giant of the pharmaceuticals company of earlier times. And as much as 17 years, he was in Alembic, right from medical representative up to sales manager. And because of his distinguished performance, he was invited by Tarun Gupta, who is unfortunately no more. He was one of the reckoning force in pharmaceuticals. You guys may have heard of him. Okay, he was director of names in India. He joined on invitation by Tarun Gupta, Solus, which was an upcoming division of Ranbaxy in 1995, I guess. And there I also met him, and I joined as a junior manager to him. And he was one of the chief architects to shape us as a managers. And after a long stint in Solus, he fortunately got into international marketing, and he started his international journey from USV, went on to and the last Microlabs also. He has been somewhat more than 15 odd years. So, and he is a known name, very reckoning force in international pharma, and kind of a legend in his own senses. My pleasure, KD sir. On to you.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for my elaborate introduction. Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you again. And I'll start the presentation. I have been in Philippines for the last 10 years. My first visit to Philippines was in the year 2010, and that was just for a survey. More or less, I took charge of Philippines from the year 2011, so it's 10 years now. For the last 1 year and 5 months, I've been managing the business from Bombay, as I returned from Philippines and Thailand on 1st of March 2020. The lockdown was announced on 12th of March. In fact, I was to move to Sri Lanka on 15th March, so everything got cancelled. Since then, I've been here. But I know Philippines quite well. I've traveled the length and breadth of Philippines from Cagayan Valley to Zamboanga and from Iloilo to Tacloban. We have 3 offices in Makati. We have 2 warehouses. I have a field force of around 160 people in Philippines. So we are reasonably well. I'll take you to the presentation. As far as my introduction is concerned, it has been too elaborate. Yes, I have been in the industry for more than 40 years. My first company was Levied. Out of my 40 years, almost 20 years have been in the domestic market, in the Indian market, and for the last 20 years, I've been in the international market. Philippines is known for islands, and they say it is a country of 7,107 islands. Though there are additions also, but I've still not received the official figure. But I think Prax wrote a message in the morning that now we have around 7,641 islands. So that's one of the uniqueness of Philippines. There are a lot of other attributes. For instance, Filipinos, they celebrate the longest Christmas, which starts from August, September, and goes on till the first week of January. There are rice terraces in Philippines, which are endorsed by the World Heritage Sites. There are 37 volcanoes in Philippines. We have many earthquakes and lots of tsunamis, or typhoons, as we say. It's a wonderful country. I've enjoyed my stay there for 10 years and possibly will continue there after I get my permission from the immigration to travel there. This is the map of Philippines. You can say Philippines can be divided into 3 major parts. The first one, the upper one, is the Luzon. Then there is South Luzon, and the lower one is Mindanao, Visayas Mindanao. The country is made up of 7,107 islands, but 2,000 are inhabited. And it is between South China Sea and Pacific Ocean. On the east are Korea and Japan. On the west are Singapore, Hong Kong, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar. On top are Taiwan and China, and below are Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. That's the location of the Philippines. Within the Philippines, as I just now showed you on the map, Luzon is the largest island. Manila, or Greater Manila, is the capital of the country, which is made up of 17 cities. It has a population of more than 10 million. Out of these 17 cities, we are based in Makati. In fact, Makati, you can say, is a economic capital of Manila. So most of the offices of pharmaceutical company and other industries are there in Makati. South Luzon are the Visayas Islands. Cebu is the largest city in the country. And the second largest island is Mindanao. The capital of Mindanao is Davao, the second largest city of the country. Mr. Duterte, the honorable president of the Philippines, comes from Davao. He was mayor of Davao for more than 20 years. The population is 102 million. One of the figures which I was checking day for yesterday is 109 million. So we can say it's, in terms of crores, it's 10.2 crores or 10.9 crores, or roughly we can say 11 crores. And the growth of population is around 1.59%. The urban population has doubled in the last 3 decades. So most of the people have come to Manila or Cebu or Davao, the other major cities in the country, because there is employment there. I think all of you must be knowing that almost 10 million Filipinos work abroad, okay, which is more than a crore. In fact, almost a decade back, when I was based in Moscow, I used to travel to Dubai quite often because we had a central warehouse in Dubai. And the hotel where I used to stay, there were lots of Filipinos working over there. They were good people and they used to talk in English, you know, and so I got friendly to them. But at that time, I had not thought that the company would send me to Philippines, you know. So I have come across Filipinos in a couple of countries, even in UK and a few more countries, and they bring a lot of foreign exchange to the country. Male population is more till the age of 60 years, above 60 years, female population is more. Women live 5 years more than women. Their local language is Tagalog, but most of the Filipinos speak English. They have a Republican government patterned after that of USA. As you know, the ideologies and the philosophies of Republican and Democratic are different, but they believe in flat income tax, okay, unlike India, where it increases with the income. Abortion is banned. Abortion is illegal in the Philippines. Gay marriages, as per Republican, are not allowed, but they are more or less legal. Healthcare is more or less in the hands of the private companies. Philippines promotes capitalism like Republicans. You can say Philippines is a mini USA, okay, though of course it has a mixed culture of American, Spanish, Chinese, and even Malay. 6% economic growth between 2011 and 2015. Per capita income is 7,282 US dollar. It is $2,000 more than per capita income in India. Banking is stable. Presence of foreign banks like Citibank are there. The present conversion of peso to euro, peso is the local currency in Philippines, is easy and convenient. 1 USD is around 50 peso. So if I compare it with India, 1 USD is around 74 rupees in India, 1 USD is 750 peso. So their economy is stronger than India. International reserves are comfortable. 6.5 people are unemployed. Post-pandemic, it is more. So the figure is roughly 10%, but it has still not been authenticated. 25% of the population is poor. 75% of the patients pay for medicines out of their own pocket. Private insurance companies and foreign funding, only 30% of the patients are given medicines by the government, hospitals, and institutes. Healthcare lags behind Southeast and North Asia and has slowed down in the last few years. The leading cause of death is heart disease as far as non-communicable diseases are concerned, followed by vascular diseases. So whether it is carotid artery disease or atherosclerosis and so on and so forth. And the third one you can say is malignancy. Under communicable diseases, the leading cause of death is tuberculosis and pneumonia. And of course, the road accidents as far as external is concerned. Philippines has the fastest growing HIV endemic in the world. And there are a few Indian companies who have entered the HIV market. I think one of them is Hetero. which are doing good business. Even we, micro labs, we are getting a couple of HIV products registered. In fact, the HIV patients in Philippines are even more than Thailand. I cover Thailand also. I look after Asia Pacific, so I travel to Thailand and Malaysia and other countries also. But the number of patients are more in Philippines as far as HIV is concerned. The pharmaceutical scenario, an essential drug list was introduced in the year 1980. We call it PND formulary, or Philippines National Drug Formulary. In 1987, Philippines National Drug Policy, PNDP, was formed to take care of quality, affordability, etc. The Generics Drug Act was introduced in 1988. And once again, around 20 years back, the Cheap Medicine Bill was introduced. The government has felt that the drugs were very expensive. In fact, they were. If you go a couple of years back, the prices of the drugs in the Philippines were equivalent to Japan. And socio-economic conditions were different. And so the government introduced the Generic Drugs Act and therefore Cheap Medicine Bill. I wouldn't say significant changes have taken place, but yes, the generic market has increased in the last 10 years. In 2009, DOH, that is Department of Health, imposed MDRP, maximum drug retail price, which is followed to some extent. If we look at the pharma supply chain, 60% supply of medicines is through chain pharmacies. I mean, whoever has been to Philippines, I heard Saurabh has been there, or maybe Ashish also. All of them must have heard the name of Mercury Chain Pharmacy, which is the largest chain pharmacy of innovator brands and branded generics. To be precise, it is 1,107 retail outlets. But in the last, I had a meeting with my distributor a fortnight back, and the distributor said that some of the Mercury pharmacies have closed in the last 6 months, because of low sales, etc. I mean, you can say the effect of pandemic, but there's still 1,100. It is the strongest chain pharmacy. Another change which has taken place in the last few years, as I just now said, that the generic market has increased in the last 10 years. I mean, I remember when I was there in 2011, the generic market was around 2% of the total pharma market, which now has grown to almost 20%, And with that, you can see the TGP and the generic pharmacies have grown. But another change which has taken place is that even Mercury chain pharmacies, which was only selling innovator brands and branded generics, is also selling generic brands. But they're selling generic brands of Pfizer and GSK, and they even have initiated for house brands. Coming to another chain pharmacy, it is South Star. South Star used to be leading in South Luzon, and Rose Chain Pharmacy used to be leading in Cebu. Cebu is that Visayas thing, which I indicated in my second slide. But very recently, just a couple of weeks back, South Star Chain Pharmacy has taken over Rose Chain Pharmacies. So they're one now. In fact, the process is going on of taking over. They also keep innovator brands and branded generics. So by innovator brands, as you all know, is the research brands, and branded generics. For instance, my company is promoting branded generics, with a field force of 150 people. And there are a lot of generics, Now coming to TGP, the generic pharmacy, this is the largest generic pharmacy in the country with 2,000 retail outlets, In 2011, when I went there the second time, I had a meeting with Mr. Louis, who is the owner and the CEO of this company. And at that time, they just had 600 pharmacies, But he was quite confident that by the end of 2012, we will be crossing 1,000, and maybe in another 5 years' time, 2,000 retail outlets. And whatever he said came out true, Now, the growth of TGP from 500 retail outlets to 2,000 outlets speaks volumes about the generic inflow, the generic brands, followed by Generica or Actimed. This is the second largest generic chain pharmacy with 800 retail outlets. I remember 10 years back when I was there, they had just 100 retail pharmacies. So they also have grown to 800 pharmacies. And then Actimed is also been taken over by Ayala Group, which is one of the biggest business group in the Philippines. Then continuing with the pharma supply chain, then 10% of the sales comes from independent pharmacies, 15% from government and private hospitals. They come out with tenders, but hospitals have monopolistic pricing policies. Out of hospital purchase are discouraged. And then 15% of sales comes from clinics, dispensing doctors. In fact, the number of dispensing doctors have grown after a lot of generics came into the pharma market. Remote areas suffer shortage of drugs. So there has been an unprecedented increase in the number of dispensing doctors. Moreover, margins are good for dispensing doctors because companies give 5+2 free, 5+3 free, 10+5, 10+10 free, So they have a good margins, and that's one of the reasons that the number of dispensing doctors has increased incredibly in the country, And of course, the second reason is that remote areas don't have pharmacies, so there is a shortage. 80% of the doctors prescribe innovator brands or branded generic brands, and 20% roughly prescribe generic brands. The market of generics, as I said, has increased in the last 1 decade and continues to increase because of the socio-economic conditions. As per IMS, the pharma market in the Philippines is 2020 was around 4.5 billion US dollars. 60% of the pharma market is dominated by the US, European, and Japanese multinational companies like GSK, Novartis, Pfizer, etc. Sandoz, Novartis, OEP, and Jets are significant players in generic segment, though Pfizer and GSK also have come out with generic products, but they have a sort of a tie-up with Mercury pharmacies. Glaxo, GSK, Novartis, and Sanofi are among the largest foreign pharmaceutical companies doing business in the Philippines. Among domestic drug companies, United Laboratories, Pascual Laboratories, GC International, and Netra Pharma are the largest. I have a separate slide for United Laboratories, or as we call them, Unilabs. Sales of pharmaceuticals in the Philippines have accounted for almost 1% of the country's GDP. So as far as GDP is concerned, pharma just contributes 1%. It was forecasted that its GDP share would minimally grow in the coming years. If you look at the growth of the pharma market in the last 5 years, it has been between 4.5% to 5%. And possibly it has slowed down in the last year, which was the pandemic year. This is the share of the therapeutic classes. The leading is anti-infectives or antibiotics, antibacterials. They enjoy around 11% market share. So this is similar to other Asian countries. If you look at India, our market share of antibiotics is 16 to 17%, So they also have 11%, followed by antihypertensives, which is 11%. Cardiometabolic has a good share, and both hypertension and diabetes are increasing. Diabetes, you can say, is an epidemic. The generic business has grown in leaps and bounds in the last 10 years from 2% to 20%. TGP and Generica, as I just now said, with 2,800 retail pharmacies, is a proof to it. While prescription business is large in NCR, NCR means National Capital Region, dispensing business is dominating in provinces. The largest therapeutic segments are antibiotics, antihypertensives, cardiovascular, alimentary and metabolic disorders, and also respiratory. Drug related to hypertension, thrombosis, cancer, respiratory, bacterial infection, diabetes have grown even during the pandemic. And that's one of the reasons I would even add psychiatry and neurology. As far as my company's products are concerned, we have products for psychiatry, neurology, cardiometabolic, and we grew in 2020. We are growing even in this year in 2021. And one of the reasons is that these are chronic therapy products, which I just now said. Psychiatry and neurology segments contribute around 3% to the total pharma market of the Philippines, with a growth of around 5%. These are the top pharmaceutical companies in the Philippines. The number one is Unilabs, which is a local Filipino company. I'll just talk about it later. I have a separate slide on it. Followed by Pfizer, followed by GSK, Abbott, Sanofi, Novartis, Roche, Boehringer Ingelheim, Bayer, Roche, and Cathay. I think all of you know the other companies. I'll just elaborate on Unilabs. Unilabs is the leading pharmaceutical company in the Philippines, a position it has maintained for over 6 decades. In the year 2011, when I researched the market and we were starting, and I thought I cannot compete with Unilabs, I will just be relaunching my products. But I thought I can do business with Unilabs, and that's the time I first visited Unilabs and had a almost half a day meeting with their vice president, Mr. Ochawa of business development. And I found Unilab like any multinational company, So maybe in Philippines or in other countries which I worked in the last 20 years, I've been to the multinational companies' offices. Unilabs was no less than that. So they have an international culture. Very professional, very courteous. And I think by the year 2012, we had already got into an agreement with Unilabs, and today we make around 5 to 10 products manufactured for Unilabs and give it to them. Unilab is like any multinational company. They are present in every therapeutic class with a field force of around 1,500 people. They sell OTC and even cosmetic products. Most of their products are manufactured in India, Taiwan, Pakistan, China, etc. Primarily, you can say they don't manufacture their own products. They get it made from other countries, but they have a good, strong marketing team. The company has enjoyed around 22 to 25% market share. They have remained number one for the last so many years. So even companies like GSK or Pfizer or Abbott still have 8%, 7%, or 9% market share. So I still don't feel that in another 5, 10, 15 years, anybody would be able to take them over. So it's United Laboratories Incorporation, commonly known as Unilab. Unilab is a Philippine private pharmaceutical company. A good company, I would say, because we do business with them now, and they dominate this scenario. Okay, I missed this slide. I go back to here. In total, there are more than 500 drug companies, 700 drug importers, and 5,000 drug distributors in the Philippines. Over the years, the MNCs, which had manufacturing plants in the countries, closed down their facilities and began to import from corporate production centers abroad or turned to local contract manufacturing. Yet there are companies which do local manufacturing. I have a slide for that. Coming to the top ethical drugs, Norvasc from Pfizer, Ventolin from GSK, Plavix from Sanofi. I think all of you know these brand names. Augmentin from GSK. Neoblol this is metoprolol from GX International. It's a local Philippine company. Lipitor, all of you know from Pfizer. Tazocin is Tazobactam. Zigen is from Unilabs. This is ceftriaxone. One of the most commonly prescribed antibiotic after amoxicillin and clavulanic acid is ceftriaxone, and they lead in it, felodipine and seretide. From the top 10 products, 3 products are from GSK, 2 are for asthma and 1 for infection. There are two products from Pfizer, one for hypertension, the other is for high lipids, that is Norvasc and Lipitor. One each from Sanofi, AstraZeneca, Wyeth, Unilabs, and GX International. Among the top 10 OTC products, there are 5 vitamin preparations, 2 are cough preparations, 2 are for pain relief, 1 is for weight management. The OTC market in 2020 was approximately 670 million out of 4 to 4.5 billion. I mean, IMS says around 4.5 billion. There are other reports which say 4 billion. So we can roughly say that the Philippine market is between 4 to 4.5 billion. Out of that, 670 million comes from OTC products, which is primarily vitamins, cough preparation, and pain relief. The country has around 50,000 doctors. We have IMs, you can say, are physicians, you know. So in India, we call them physicians. In Philippines, we call them IMs. There are around 6,500. There are 15,000 GPs, like any other country, Asian country, there are lots of GPs. Gynecologists around 6,000, pediatricians 7,000, general surgeons 4,000. As far as specialists are concerned, the number, like any other country, is less. Cardiologists are 1,100, endocrinologists 400 only, oncologists 200, gastroenterologists 300, pulmonologists 700, psychiatrists 600, neurologists 500. We have products for psychiatrists, neurologists, pulmonologists, gastroenterologists, cardiologists. Okay. And of course, every company, you know, who has general products have to go to IMs and GPs and family medicines, you know. So when I say GPs, this is a mix of GPs, pure GPs, as well as family medicines. As far as product registration is concerned, I'll just give these 2 slides because Mr. Prats will talk on it, though I have sent a presentation of almost 55 slides. Okay, but then let him take over that. Companies have to obtain license to operate. We call it LTO in short form before they can register the products in the Philippines. And LTO, after the application, takes 2 months. So the pharmaceutical product registration requires the following information: LTO, a certificate of agreement between the manufacturer and distributor, or the manufacturer and importer for the product, the application for registration of pharmaceutical form, information on product formulation and dosage, a certificate of analysis and specification for all raw materials, information on the manufacturing processes, including procedures, in-process controls, production equipment, packaging procedures, labeling materials, stability data, and a product sample, which should include English labels for the product registration number, the generic and branding names. As I said a couple of minutes back, that though the language, local language is Tagalog, that everything is done in English. Everybody practically speaks English. Okay, so this registration requires are based on ASEAN, that is Asian Common Technical Dossiers, that we in short we call ACTD. Part 1 is Common Administrator for product information for all products. Part 2 also is quality for all categories of products. Part 3 and Part 4 are primarily for innovators or new chemical entity and biotechnological products. You know, Part 3 and Part 4. Let Prats take it in details. I think he has an expertise on that. A presentation was sent to me by my regulatory team. I have a couple of people working in my office on regulatory. We have around 100 products registered in Philippines, out of which we commercialize 60 products, and there are almost 50 products which are in the pipeline, which are getting registered. As far as pharmaceutical importers are concerned, the Filipino pharmaceutical industry depends heavily on imports of both raw materials and finished products. Very few foreign companies undertake their own manufacturing in the Philippines. I have a slide for that. Instead, they import and distribute finished pharmaceutical products, or they import drug ingredients and outsource products to local manufacturers. These are some of the major import pharmaceuticals importers. Okay, out of which some of them are companies, you know. So Merck is there, or Wyeth is there, or Servier is there. I think the first company of Ashish. This is the slide for landed cost levied or imported pharmaceutical products. Import duties is around 3.84%. QC testing is 0.5 to 6%. Banking fees, national corporate tax, etc. As far as pharmaceutical manufacturing is concerned, I think all of you have been in international, so you know about Zulik. Zulik is basically a company from Switzerland, and they are into many countries for logistics, for distribution, and also for manufacturing. One domestic manufacturer dominates production for most foreign pharmaceutical companies in the Philippines. The name is Interfil Laboratories, which is basically Zulik Family Trust Company. They handle contracts from 15 to the 20 biggest foreign pharmaceutical companies doing business in the Philippines. In 2009, it managed almost 90% of WAV's local drug manufacturing. In the same year, it managed all local manufacturing for Pfizer. Apart from Interfil, Unilab, the largest Filipino company, has the largest individual share of the domestic market, but they were doing manufacturing earlier. They don't do anything now. They're getting the products manufactured from other countries. Other firms that serves foreign pharmaceutical companies called Hizon Laboratories, Swiss Pharma, Euromat, they still do it. All domestic and international manufacturing facilities producing drugs for the Philippines market are required to meet Filipino good manufacturing practices, as we call them, GMP. The Philippines is a member of the World Trade Organization, so legal provisions granting patents to manufacturers exist and they are enforced. There are 61 licensed pharmaceutical manufacturers in the Philippines. In 2007, domestic manufacturers held around 31% share. GSK conducts its own manufacturing in the country. It has the largest MNC manufacturing facilities in the Philippines. This is manufacturers' markup. Very few pharmaceutical companies do their own manufacturing and distribution in the Philippines, as I just now said. As far as distribution is concerned, almost 80% of it was enjoyed by Zulik, and there is another distributor called Metro Drug. Long time back, Metro Drug handled my company's distribution also, but now we handle our own distribution. But we have one distributor, RBC distributor. Some companies in the Philippines are engaged in both distribution as well as manufacture of pharmaceutical products. Example of such companies are Eon, Pharmatech, Biomat, Speedcom. This is wholesalers distribution markup. PPMA is Philippine Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association. We call it PPMA, which was basically formed in 1950. All major companies are a member of it. As I just said, there are 500 drug companies, 700 drug importers, 5,000 drug distributors in the Philippines. However, 3/4 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies are foreign. Foreign pharmaceutical companies control 66% of the total industry sales, with market shares of individual pharma companies ranging from 1% to 6%. As I just now said, the highest market share is Unilabs, around 22%. Okay, followed by Pfizer, GSK, around 7-8% each. 143 European companies command a combined market share of 38%, and 76 US companies control a combined share of 28%. So 38 plus 28 comes to around 66%. These are, of course, the largest company: GSK, Novartis, Sanofi, Pfizer, Wyeth. Unlike most foreign pharmaceutical companies, GSK conducts its own manufacturing. It has the largest MNC manufacturing facilities in the Philippines. They produce drugs for Philippines, but they also do it for Southeast Asian markets. Other foreign pharmaceutical companies are using the Philippines as a base for expansion, also for research for the rest of Southeast Asia. For example, Novartis established their Southeast Asia headquarters just south of Manila. They are doing clinical trials for vaccines. presence of foreign versus local pharmaceutical companies in the Philippines, there are roughly there are 250 local and 250 foreign companies in the Philippines. Okay, now this is just a slide. Why invest in the Philippines? The generic market is rapidly growing. There is good scope for branded generic and generic products. Open pricing, no maximum price was introduced, but it is not followed. There is open pricing. The price difference between India and the Philippines is 3 to 4 times, which means there are more margins in Philippines, Per capita income is $2,000 more than India. The Philippines is the 11th most attractive pharma market in the Asia Pacific and the 3rd largest in ASEAN after Indonesia and Thailand. We have operations in Thailand and Indonesia also. I go to Thailand often. I would say relatively it is easier to do business in Philippines than in other countries, Even the regulatory, though it's strict, and Prats will talk about it, but it is more strict in Thailand, Getting a product registered is hell of a task, It's not what I used to have it 20 years back, When I was working in Russian countries in the CIS, I remember going to small countries like Moldova or Azerbaijan or Georgia or Kyrgyzstan or Turkmenistan and getting a registration certificate within 2 days, just because I was friendly with the FDA director. But it's no more now, I think in all these countries, it takes 2 years, 3 years, or even 4 years to get a product registered. Okay, as far as business models are concerned, the medical representatives, like in India, meet doctors and visit pharmacies and government and private hospitals, clinic, etc. They detail products as we detail in India. They give samples as we give in samples. But as per FDA norms, samples can be given of some categories only. For instance, antibiotic samples are not allowed in the Philippines. So if some doctor wants, he has to give it on a prescription. He has to give a request on the prescription, and then only we give it from our office, and it is recorded, because the FDA can come and check, The major sales come from prescription, but there is sales from dispensing doctors and hospital tenders. In general, gifts cannot be given to the doctors. So only some gifts are allowed, maybe pens, or writing pads, etc. International sponsorships are only allowed for educational purposes. So suppose I have sponsored a doctor to UK to attend a conference, then it is recorded and I have to give a record to not only to FDA, but to the BIR, that is Bureau of Revenues, that is income tax. In India, like associations of cardiology, endocrinology, psychiatry, neurology, etc., organize conferences twice in a year. They also do it, and the pharma companies participate by way of booths and sponsorship of lunches and difference. So if you look at the business model or the scenario, it's more or less the same, of course, with some differences. A couple of Indian companies operate in the Philippines with branded generics like Torrent, Sun, Lupin. Lupin, in fact, took over a Filipino company called Multicare. So they do business in the name of Multicare, but they sell Lupin brands. Zydus Cadila, Ipca, Glenmark, Wockhardt, Hitro, Alchem, Raptacos, Bet, and my company Microlab. But we do business by the name of Brown and Merck Philippines there. Out of the Indian companies, Torrent is the leading Indian company in the Philippines who do around business of 25 million US dollars. There are lots of Indian companies who manufacture generic products on contract basis, So a lot of this generic market, which I said has grown from 2% to 20%, is in the hands of the distributors, the national distributors, and they get their products manufactured from a lot of companies in Ahmedabad or in Punjab, etc. And they sell it. So the agreement basically is on price, and it is the distributor in Philippines who sells it on the price. Competition is both global and local. US and European multinationals like AstraZeneca, Lilly, Janssen, Novartis, all of them, Lundbeck, are all present. The prices of products have decreased in the last few years, and multinationals have cut down on heads counts in the last 1 decade. As I said, the growth of the pharma market has been between 4.5 to 5% in the last few years. One of the reasons is because of the introduction of cheap medicine bill. because of the socio-economic conditions. There are job opportunities for Indians for senior managers, which means country heads, CFOs, regional heads, So I'll just give you my example. As far as we are concerned, out of 160 people or 170 people, we just have 3 Indians. So it's me who works as president and director. Then I have a CFO who is also an Indian and 1 regional head, Rest, of course, are all Filipinos. So as far as our philosophy of Brownenberg is concerned, it is to give employment to the Filipinos, So we hope to give employment to another 30, 40 people next year, okay, and maybe to 300 people in another 2 years' time. That's how we look at Brownenberg's vision in Philippines. Work permits, 9G visa given by the immigration department for 1, 2, or 3 years. One can get investment visa on deposit of $30,000. As far as 9G visa is concerned, it takes 2-3 months and costs around $2,000-3,000 US. Cost of living, of course, is more than India, but significantly less than developed countries. As I've lived in Russia, Ukraine, Almaty, a couple of more countries, it is definitely less than that. 1-bedroom apartment can cost between 35,000 to 50,000 peso. 50,000 peso is $1,000 US. 2-bedroom apartment can cost 60,000. I'm talking about the rent, 60,000 to 100,000 peso. As far as food is concerned, there are lots and lots of Indian restaurants because there are lots of Indians in Philippines, especially from North India, the Sikhs, the Punjabis, the Sindhis, they've been there for many, many years. And a lot of students are there who are studying medicine and engineering. There are no direct flights to Manila. In between, Philippines Airlines started from Delhi, but it stopped after some time. There are flights from Manila via Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Thai Airways, Malaysian Airlines, Emirates, they all fly every day. They were flying every day, but after the pandemic, of course, it's all at a standstill, I've traveled by all these airlines. I know these airlines well. If you look at the ticket, economy ticket from Bombay, it is around 55,000 rupees in normal circumstances, 55,000 to 75,000. And it's 50% more for the business class. It takes around 8 to 12 hours from India to Manila, depending on the stopover. Okay, I normally travel from Bombay to Manila by Thai Airways because it takes the minimum time, You can see the map. Bombay and Bangkok and Manila is almost in one line, Okay, now these are 3 slides. I think if you don't have time, I'll just skip it. I was just doing a project on global pharma markets, so I wrote it. So that's what I have to say about Philippines. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to talk. If you have questions, they are welcome. Shall I stop sharing it? Ashish?
Yes, yes,
As per IMS, the pharma market in the Philippines in 2020 was around $4.5 billion US.
I didn't hear, somebody was saying something.
Shall I stop sharing it? Ashish?
Yeah, you can. Oh, yeah. So thank you, Katie sir. And it was a very absorbing and a very interesting and a very easy to understand presentation. And people, I'm sure, would have got the idea of how Philippines market looks like and our opportunity. I'll just summarize what you said is in few words for a basic understanding of the audience who may have joined a little late is that Philippines, the main center of the business is Manila, with the country having 10 crore population. Tagalog is the language, but other languages are also spoken, and English primarily is being understood by each and every, understood and spoken by each and every Filipino guys, and it is like kind of a mini USA, and they always think that they are a part of the USA. Leading cause of death is heart and vascular diseases, and there are other communicable diseases like TB, pneumonia, and the fastest growing segment is HIV. And coming to the sales and marketing side, the largest pharmacy chain is Mercury, and then it is followed by South Star, and then in the generics it is PGP. Interestingly, 80% of the doctors prescribe innovator drugs, and rest of them is branded generics. Pharma market happens to be $4.5 billion, which significantly is high because I always considered it is not more than $2 billion, honestly. So that's a revelation for me also. It's a $4.5 billion with 60% of the business is in the hands of multinationals like GSK, Novartis, Sanofi, Pfizer, etc. And subsequently, again, for generics, the business, the leading companies are Sandoz, VP, and Getz. Amongst the locals, the United Pharma, Pascual, GC, and Retrofarm are the largest ones. The leading segments, as you said it rightly, like India, it is anti-infectives and antihypertensives, multivitamins, etc., etc. I'm not surprised because of our living conditions and tropical, weather conditions and so on. The generic business, as you said, is a very interesting business because it has had a potential to grow in next year, 10 years, from current 2% to 20%. It has grown by 10 years in last 2 to 20%. So therefore, our Indian camaraderie and the pharmaceutical friends would be very happy to know that if they haven't decided yet, they can still ponder and they can come and start their registrations and all with BFAT. I guess, as you have said, that Unilab is the largest local company for last 6 decades with 1,500 people, and their manufacturing spanning around 4 countries, which is India, Taiwan, Pakistan, China, and they have a significant market share of Philippines standalone 20 to 25%. Unfortunately, after so much of development, Philippines still depends largely on imports, both formulations and APIs. Not much manufacturing happening. And Katie sir, I would like to say that if you remember, Vietnam not being far, Vietnam has scoped up a lot in terms of manufacturing. They were just like Philippines or some other countries, but if you see, they have gone by leaps and bounds ahead in terms of self-dependency. So that was one of the key interesting points. MNC still controls 66% of sales and then balances of the generics. And interestingly, there are 500 pharmaceutical companies in total in Philippines, 250 each being multinationals and local companies. This is a good number of companies. It is still a very good generic market company because you still have a realization of 3 to 4 times of if you compare the price from Indian standpoint. So that is still a very interesting, lucrative market for us Indians. If audience are there, that is one of the key points. Primarily because their paying capacity is a little larger than us, because the GDP also is $2,000, which is far ahead than India. And conventional mode of promoting the drugs, which is the MR goes to the doctors, and subsequently the way exactly we do in India is the same model adopted by Philippines, which is very, very good. So it is again one of the key factors for our Indian companies to think and get entry there. And the good point was, I have forgot one point, was that amongst Indians, there are a lot of good companies. I mean, the usual suspects who are ruling the roost over there as well. The Lupin, Wokhard, Hetero, Alchem, your company, of course, Micro, Raptacos. So quite interesting, and I hope that the audience, the spectators who are going to see this would have been informative to them. Over to you, Praveen.
Thank you, Mr. Ashish. This was really very nice and with lot of insights which has been shared with by Kedisha. I think especially for young people or the person who has joined recently for position BD or international, I think it's just fantastic for them, including me. I have learned a lot and lot from KD sir. So once again, thank you, sir, for joining us, and it was really insights. Still, we are getting many appreciations by Mr. Anindya Mukherjee, Mr. Nasiruddin Chiste, Mr. Kamlesh Sharma, then Mr. Arpan Kumar Paul, Mr. Mitesh Mishra, and Mr. Jitendra Bhardwaj. Again, once Hitesh sir also, he is there. Questionnaire will keep some hold because we have bit shortage of time. So I suggest we will move with Mr. Pratt, and in the end of the session we will go with some questions. So thank you, sir. Now I would like to welcome again Mr. Pratt, and he can share his presentation and he can talk. Mr. Pratt, please.
Thank you, Praveen. I'll just share my. So before I start, thank you LPC and thank you Praveen for inviting me here. So I'll be talking now for the regulatory requirements here in Philippines, the environment. So before I start, as they mentioned, for everyone who wants to enter the Philippines market, this would be a good presentation to get into. And we also assist any companies that want to enter the Philippines market. So these are the topics I would be talking about. The requirements to start a local office, product registration requirements, timeline of registration, cost of registration in the Philippines, and there are definitely some unique characteristics in the Philippines that are different from other countries. So number one, yeah. So number one is to start a local office, you need to register your office here in Philippines. So we're talking about requirements to start a local office is to apply for they call it a license to operate in Philippines FTA. So you preferably if you are a manufacturer entering here, you would be preferably in the category of importer and distributor. So the first step would be to register your company as a sole proprietor or a corporation. So you register this with the sole proprietor or partnership. You register this with the Department of Trade, DTI, or if you're a corporation, you register this with the Securities and Exchange Commission here in Philippines. Next is you'll need to submit a list of documents, risk management plan, and SOPs of your office. This also includes organizational charts and other documentation that would support that you are, if anything happens, characterize, prevent, or minimize risks relating to your products. This would include your recall procedures, your quality control procedures. Yeah. And then third would be having a licensed pharmacist. So you cannot apply a license without having a licensed pharmacist. So you have your one of the employees would need to be a pharmacist, a licensed pharmacist who has the license available for use, because you'll have to declare it that license is connected to your establishment. And so definitely these are the main registration requirements to apply for a license to operate. Just a reminder that for all corporations that are planning to enter Philippines, whenever you're going to be putting up an office, as per the Securities and Exchange Commission, it has to be 51% Filipino ownership. So for us to be able to incorporate the office here in Philippines. This is a very basic procedure, and timelines and costings we'll be talking about later on. Next is once you have acquired your license to operate from FTA, you are good to go to now apply for, they call it the CPR, Certificate of Product Registration. A CPR is only issued to enterprises and manufacturers that already have valid LTO. And you have to submit a application of CPR for each product. So individually variant, color, dosage, strength, type, form. Each product must have its own registration number, and um, all the details of a CPR, all the details of the product and the manufacturer and importer are all mentioned in the CPR. So what are the requirements to submit to apply for a CPR here in Philippines? So number one is so nowadays, before the pandemic, the application was physical. You had to put your company documents and all your files in a USB and bring it to FDA. And this procedure has been evolving throughout the years. Initially, it was you had to bring hard copies. Way back in 2012, you had to bring the whole printed dossier and bring it to FDA. Then in 2016, they evolved to CDs. Then in 2018, they evolved to USBs. And now, because of the pandemic, everything is done online. The only thing you need to submit physically is authenticated documents and your samples. All the other documents are submitted online. So once you go to the FDA website, you can find the application to register for a drug product. That's where you need to have the accomplished application form. Next is having your ACTD and ACTD dossier format. It's the Asian Common Technical Dossier, which is 4 parts, compared to other countries where it's 5 parts. I believe this is easier, and then you have to submit the artwork, which the artwork there is specific guidelines. That's why it's easy to identify products that a manufacturer opens up for or supplies to Philippines, because they are following specific guidelines. There are specific guidelines on font sizes. There is a box for the generic name. There is you have to mention full company information, importer, distributor, manufacturer. You have to include the registration number, the batch details. All of that are requirements of the artwork. Next is to get the permit to register. To get the permit to register, this policy is just implemented this COVID. Before COVID, we had a policy called the GMP clearance certificate, wherein we had to apply for inspection. So if you were a PICS manufacturer or a EU or USA manufacturer, you could just apply for the GMP clearance, and you would be getting the GMP approval within 2 or 3 months. But for non-PICS, non-EU, non-USA manufacturers, you had to, or just plain WHO manufacturers had to apply for Philippines FDA inspection, which used to take 2 to 3 years to get the actual inspection and have the inspection conducted and have the whole approval process. But now, because of the pandemic and flights haven't been discontinued or are been very difficult times. So what FDA has implemented is that since they cannot travel, they have implemented this new policy called permit to register, where even though you are a WHO manufacturer, you can just apply to Philippines FDA and pay the fees, which we will discuss later, and you will get the approval within 2 to 3 months. Then you can begin your application for product registration, and inspection of that manufacturer would happen when COVID situation is now more controlled, which we believe will happen. Which we believe the inspections would happen in the next 2 or 3 years, especially as this COVID situation is still evolving, and as there's a very long queue of manufacturers who want to get inspected by the Philippines FDA. Next is samples. So the good thing about FDA now, because also of COVID, they're more understanding. They understand that some manufacturers have hard time preparing samples at this moment. So they have those, even though this is a requirement, this can be submitted after your application, 6 months. They give around 6 months time that you can follow up your samples before the actual after your application. Next is this is one of the most important documents you need. You need the authenticated foreign agency agreement. Foreign agency agreement is basically the agreement of your office in Philippines and a manufacturer abroad. Their GMP and a copy of their manufacturing license must be sent to the Philippines embassy to get authenticated, and that copy, the hard copy, must be present when you are submitting to Philippines FDA. Yes, and sixth requirement is bioequivalence for those products that are falling under the oral segment. Oral, talking about tablet, capsules, some dry suspensions. This policy only applies for this policy. So for bioequivalence, you have to conduct the testing based on Philippines innovators, wherein there is a list provided by FDA, or if you have a local importer, they can get that list where it's mentioned which generic name has the corresponding innovator sample, and then you can purchase that sample in, say, the retails that KD Sharma mentioned, Mercury Drugs, Southstar, or the generics. You get those products, and then you have to have the bioequivalence conducted on those innovator samples. So Philippines follows the PICS guidelines. So this is one thing that Philippines is being very strict on when they go for physical inspection in the foreign countries, that they want all the foreign manufacturers to comply at PICS standard, which is called the Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme. This you can go in detail. There's all references available online. If you search this, they have a website where you can follow their guidelines. It's a very deep topic where if you want your plan to be, if you want your manufacturing plant to be compliant with PICS, you really have to be investing a lot and be following it from ground up. It's quite difficult if you have infrastructure restraints that would inhibit you from entering Philippines market because of old guidelines that you have used, or old foundations that you have used when you were building your plan. Yeah, and you can get the approval time of the permit to register. So just for more understanding on cost and time, right now, because of the pandemic, when you apply for the license to operate, you need FDA to actually inspect your office or your area. But of course, because of the pandemic, that inspection has been disrupted. They are allowing on special circumstances to operate, but because of the inspection, the timeline was 4 to 6 months. Usually it's 1 to 3 months. Next is the cost. So the cost is, your initial application is $1,500 US and $300 US per year of validity. Per year of validity, because the initial LTO, the license to operate that they will issue, would be on a 3-year basis. And then after your renewal would be extended to 5 years. So then it will become on a 5-year basis. Next is permit to register. As mentioned, you can apply already for permit to register once you have your LTO. This would cost around timeline of 2 to 3 months, and the initial payment would be $3,500 US to for them to accept your application and process it. Then you'll have to pay this $10 US is depending on which country you're applying from. If your manufacturer is coming from ASEAN countries, Usually the range would be around 7,000 US dollars in total, including there are other expenses that you have to pay for the inspection, because the inspection conducted will be by 3 inspectors on 3 to 5 days, and you'll be having to pay their air freight. You'll have to be paying their hotel, their food. So this is all included in the 10,000 US dollars. If you're coming from Asia Pacific, the fees are different. This would increase to around 12,000 to 15,000. Next is product registration. Product registration cost currently is 300 US dollars plus 80 US dollars per year of validity. A CPR is issued at maximum of 5 years validity and renewable. The timeline, the ideal timeline targeted of FDA Philippines is around 264 days, which I mentioned in the previous slide. But the actual timeline that happens in reality is around 18 months. Sometimes it also extends on 24 months. This is because of so many other new policies and the activity that's going on in Philippines FDA. So this timeline is being worked on by different government agencies to be able to reduce this and have a more efficient FDA. So here, one of the unique attributes of Philippines is they have this policy called the Certificate of Listing of Identical Drug Products, which is called the CLIDP application. This is where once you have received your primary CPR, which is your main registration certificate for the product, they call it, you are able to convert this to, they call it CLIDP application, and then wherein you can have the same product but at different brand names for different distributors. So this policy has two benefits. One is the manufacturer is able to serve multiple distributors for different brands, and different distributors are able to source products at a lower MOQ requirement, which can make it easier for them to have their branding here in Philippines, which contributes in the generic market. So this is something that's taken advantage of by a lot of local importers, so they can serve the geographical location of Philippines, where in a distributor, say in Luzon or in Mindanao, would like a exclusive brand in their geographical area. This would be the best policy where they can where it can be helpful to them. So yeah, our company is a global care, and if you need any information on how to register your products here in the Philippines, if you want to work together, I would love to connect with you guys here. My presentation is finished. Thank you very much. Yeah, Praveen, over you.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Yes, we have heard you very properly, and some query also has been raised. But first, let me summarize your session, like what exactly you had talked. You were talking about regulatory part of Philippines, which has managed by Philippines FDA. Majorly, you had talked about requirement of local office, then risk management, license of pharmacist. Then you have gone through product registration requirement. Majorly, you had talked about certificate for product registration, about their cost, timeline, and okay, today we come to like registration cost in Philippines is just 300 USD, and for validity is 80 USD per year. This is good information for the person or new startup people. Like international market, the biggest challenge for any startup company is this: they have to invest a huge amount in registration cost, like somewhere 2000, somewhere 5000, 7000 even, like Uganda. they have to pay one time 5,000 for one product, and after that registration they will start commercialization. So this is one good information where the person can think, okay, I have to invest 300 USD for product registration, and after that it can be commercialized. So it's one of minimal investment which we have heard today. I think it was Ghana, one of African country, which was lesser, $450, and finally they also have revised up to $300. I think they wish to compete Philippines. The Philippines. That's why they have revised. But this is a good information. Uniqueness, of course, you have talked about CLIDP, which is new information which we have heard about Philippines. And yes, end of the time, you got a good chance to inform you about your company and your contact number, your email ID. If any person, of course, they wish to contact you about to share or to get information about Philippines, they'll reach you. Thank you so much for this. And questionnaire will keep again, as I said, we are running with short of time. So let's go with Mr. Saurabh once, and then we'll come to some questions. Thank you so much. So I'll hand over this to Mr. Saurabh.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen. Thank you, LPC, for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to interact with such a diverse audience, which LPC has been able to engage since inception. Honestly speaking, today I'm feeling a little conscious to present my content. Owing to my fellow speakers, we have Mr. Prats, who is a born and brought up Filipino who understands the ground realities better than any of us. We also have Mr. K.D. Sharma, and whose experience actually is more than of my age. So I'm feeling little conscious today in presenting my content here. What I'll be doing is I'll present only the unique aspects of the Philippines market, and I'll attempt to make a comparison of these aspects of Philippines with its neighboring ASEAN countries. So the title of my presentation is Unique Philippines. So we'll be, as I just discussed, we'll be discussing about the unique aspects of Philippines only, as all the information has been extensively covered by the two fellow speakers before me. The first aspect which I'd like to touch upon is the drug registration, which is very unique practice in Philippines, which was already discussed by Mr. Prats before me. The certificate of listing of identical drug product, which is CLIDP. Very informally, it is known as a baby CPR. It basically means that against one registration application, FDA Philippines gives you more than one registration certificate. So these registration certificates can be offered to more than one importer in the Philippines market itself. So this gives a lot of liberty to the manufacturer in terms of increasing its market share by offering the same formulation with different brand names to different distributors. Philippines has a lot of challenges in terms of its distribution owing to a diverse and a very distinct geography. So having more than one distributor is already is of great advantage in Philippines. One of the condition which baby CPR has it with it, that the formulation and the site of formulation manufacturing should remain same. So that's something very unique. We don't find it anywhere else in Southeast Asia. The second aspect which I would like to touch upon is the growth factors. So here, I would say Philippines was the most affected, historically, if you see that, Philippines was the most affected member of the Southeast Asian economic crisis of 1998. In early 2000, it was known as the sick man of Southeast Asia. And the currency issues have been tremendously high. But in last one decade, Philippines has bounced back very prominently. In fact, between 2016 and 2018, Philippines has the highest rate of GDP growth in whole of Southeast Asia region. Even during COVID times, the rating agencies have been very optimistic about the Philippines market, and they are promising a high rate of returns if someone wishes to invest in Philippines. In terms of demography, if we see, Philippines has the second highest population in Southeast Asia region, close to 110 million people. And it is the 13th most populous country in the world. So obviously a high population gives you a high market as well, opportunities as well. So this is very unique in terms of the Southeast Asia region where Philippines is situated. We go with the disease burden. Communicable disease are on the high in most of the markets. But what is precisely unique about Philippines is the prevalence of communicable disease as well, where we see the high occurrence of respiratory tract infections, particularly TB and pneumonia. Infamously, Philippines has highest rate of HIV infections in the world. So these are the aspects which will give growth opportunities for the pharmaceuticals companies owing to the high disease burden. Interestingly, in terms of demography, if we see, Philippines is relatively a very younger population country, but still the communicable disease is a challenge owing to high population density and the tropical situation of Philippines in the globe. The fourth aspect which Philippines offers is the branded generics. High prices, high MRP is one of the most enticing feature of Philippines, which attracts a lot of pharmaceutical manufacturers from across the globe. The prices cannot be compared with anybody in Southeast Asia region. They are not high to a tune of 20, 30, 40%. They are as high as 300, 400 to 500% if you compare with the neighboring markets of, say, Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia. So this attracts a lot. And when I say branded generics, it means that don't expect that the product will move in the market just by offering a lower prices. Branded generics require a lot of efforts in terms of promotion and market building. And that's why we don't see high prices as an absolute truth of Philippines market. High prices, even though they are, but they have a lot of layers. So distribution expenses are very high, promotion expenses are very high. We can get an idea about the branded generics business by how hospitals select the prices. In a hospital, which caters around 13% of the distribution in Philippines market, the hospitals have their own formulary. Every formulary has been decided by the Pharmaceutical Therapeutic Committee. Now, the Therapeutic Committee works on a thumb rule. They have one innovator product and two counter generics. And historically, from the data, we can figure it out that these branded generics are not selected owing to their low prices, which happens in all other markets of Southeast Asia. Only the products which are promoted, which have regular presence in the market, are being selected in the national formulary. So this is something which is very unique. So offering low prices in Philippines is not going to work out. You have to work on the ground. A lot of legwork in terms of promotion and branding is required. The fifth aspect of growth is the PhilHealth. It is a very ambitious initiative of the Philippines government to have a universal health coverage. Owing to this, in 2009, a price regulation was introduced, which has reduced prices, MRP of some of the products to the extent of 50%. Last year itself, in May 2020, another 33 molecules were added to the MRP list. So price restriction is expected in future. But when government takes on the procurement part, the good part is that the volumes increase. So even though the prices will come down in future, it will be restricted by the government, but we can expect a huge turn in terms of volumes. And the other advantage will be if the government is procuring, they will take care of the distribution as well, which is a major challenge and major expense in the Philippines market. Coming to the next point is the distribution. Now, Philippines is one country in terms of political nature, but it is an archipelago of 70,000 islands. 2,000 of its islands are inhabited, and Philippines uses all modes of distribution, be it air, be it land, be it sea route, and therefore the distribution expenses are very high. We have dedicated distribution agencies in Philippines, which usually does not happen in other Southeast Asian markets. For example, Zulik is one of the prominent distribution company which caters to more than like 95, 96% of MNC distribution business. So all the MNCs our distribution, MNC product distribution is catered by Levied itself. Apart from that, Metro Drug is one of the most prominent distribution partner there. Local manufacturer Unilabs has its own distribution network. So distribution is very unique. We have to be very careful in deciding which geography which we wish to cover, and what are the distribution partners that we need to hire. The other unique aspect of Philippines is the toll manufacturing. In India, we commonly call as a loan licensing, where the manufacturing facility of manufacturer is used, whereby the buyer also supplies the raw material. So even though it's a small part of the business in Philippines, but the future of this business is very significant, considering the universal health coverage and the future plans of government to bring down the prices. So if the product raw material even imported from outside Philippines, the finished product manufactured in Philippines will be considered as a local manufacturing product, which will have definitely some advantage in these institutional businesses which the government is planning. The only constraint is the API supply. The Philippines is dependent up to 98% on its API supply on imports. So API suppliers will find a huge business potential in Philippines if this toll manufacturing or contract manufacturing is encouraged in Philippines. The last aspect is the oligopoly market. 70% market is owned by top 20 companies. The market is not very fragmented. Just by my fellow speakers have mentioned, Unilabs has close to 22 to 23% of market share. In terms of local manufacturers, if you only consider the local manufacturer, Unilabs has more than 60% of market share. They have 5 manufacturing units. One of the manufacturing units is EU GMP certified as well. So they have, Unilabs has plans of exports as well. When the market is governed by very few powers, it is usually considered that they sway the policies in their favor. So the market entry will be tough in future, but definitely because the players are less, everybody will find some of the market share, and then this small market share will have significant value in future for sure. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much again, LPC and my fellow speakers, to allow me to summarize the uniqueness of Philippines market. Mr. Praveen, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saurabh. This is again a good point. After KD sir, followed by Mr. Pratt, the Saurabh has taken some advantage to distinguish, and he has shared about uniqueness of Philippines. Yes, some people were aware about this CLIPD, and but mostly where the they have used the word baby CPR. So today I am well aware what is baby CPR. One gentleman is online and is asking some question also. So okay, I'll go through. Let me summarize first about your session. This is, yes, a good insight about uniqueness, and it's a positive word about Philippines. From the sick man of Southeast Asia to highest GDP in last 10 decades, which we have heard today. Yes, about this burden. Disease burden. It's balanced with communicable as well as non-communicable diseases in Philippines, but still the young country of Southeast Asia, that also had been said. We were talking about oligopoly. So most of the country, yes, Saurabh, it is like that, but Philippines is more prominent with this. Just by 20 countries, it's 20 companies. They have managed almost 70 to 80% of the market, and Unilab is one of the major in that. Torrent is the second highest from that. So this is very nice insights, and thank you for your nice session. I would like to move with some questionnaires, and the first question is open for everyone, but I think with experience I should leave on KD sir. KD sir, one gentleman, Mr. Bosari, Yes, he is BD International. He is asking if one importer who has already authorized to import and distribution for medicine, and we would like to facilitate another importer for the same medicine, but is that mandatory to take NOC from our first importer?
I didn't get it, Praveen. You mean to say, do they have a registered product in Philippines?
They have registered product by one importer. They want to finalize another importer. So do they have take any NOC from first importer?
Yes, principally, yes.
Okay. Okay. If in such situation, importer is not providing NOC, then what should be opted?
Very tricky.
It depends how they got the product registered, you know. If the product is registered in his company's name, then there is no issue. But if the product was registered by the distributor or by the importer, then he's helpless.
So I will just add, Praveen, here is that they generally arm twist you. They expect some money.
Absolutely.
You know, you will have to compensate them, try to negotiate, and then get a. Otherwise, it is impossible, to get an NOC.
Right.
There are
So,
some. Sorry, Praveen.
one more question. It's related with regulatory. So I think we can move to Mr. Pratt. Mr. Pratt, one of the plant. This question came on WhatsApp from some group. So one plant is EU GMP approved, but at present the plant is going under waiver. The date is already announced, but it has been postponed 2 times, 3 times because of this pandemic. The same plant is willing to apply for Philippines FDA product registration, because these plant is UGMP approved, but under for extension it is under process. This plant is not approved in Philippines. They have to apply. So they have to wait for EU GMP or PICS approval, or they can apply directly for Philippines FDA.
Okay. From what I understand, they have a plan that is EU approved and wants to enter the Philippines.
Yeah.
But it's under renewal. So right now, FDA is quite understanding on the situation of COVID pandemic. It's not just affecting us in Philippines; it's affecting worldwide situation. So they can use their old EU application. They just have to number one, attach their proof of renewal application with the EU authorities, and second is the letter that the inspections are being postponed. So that's one way of trying to get the application on permit register for the EU approval, the desktop approval, where you will not need to pay the $3,500. But there is another alternative where you apply for the permit to register, get the you pay the $3,500 US dollars, and then later on, once they have the EU approval, they don't need to push through with the inspections anymore. So you have two choices.
Thank you. I'll just respond with name. So yeah. I'll hand over to Ashish sir from here.
Yeah, thank you, Praveen. So there are a few more questions. Abid Hussain, KD sir is appreciating you a lot. He is saying that what a great insight you have given on regulatory aspects. There is a question from Germany from Vishal Chandra. He first of all conveys his gratitude and thanks to you and KD sir, and asks to Pratt, are there any separate regulations for medicinal supplements and medical devices?
Sure. So there are unlike policies in other countries, we have only policies on food supplements, medical devices, and drugs. We don't have Ayurvedic or herbal policies. They all fall under food supplements. So to identify the classification of the product that you have, you can always approach FDA, give them a call, or there are ways that you can identify the classification of your product through, importer, or if there's a company here in Philippines. It's quite easy. It's also searchable online.
And okay, thank you. KD sir, there is a question: do we have a price control on supplements?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Then there is another question: what has been the impact of pandemic on month-on-month sales, especially for past 6 months of Philippines, with the projected trajectory of year 2022? What he's trying to understand is the impact of month-on-month sales for last 6 months.
Like all other countries, Ashish, the chronic therapy segments, which is antihypertensives, anti-lipids, diabetes products, they have grown. So they have grown 5 to 10%. It can vary from company to company how they have grown, but the acute segment has been affected adversely. So antibiotics, NSAIDs, dermatology products, they've been affected. There has been a degrowth of around 10%. And this will continue, I suppose, till the pandemic is over. I manage a couple of countries, and in all these countries, in the year 2020, I had 10 to 15% growth on the chronic therapy products. Surprisingly, in Sri Lanka, I had growth even in the acute therapy segment, but that was an exception. So broadly, we can say the acute therapy has been affected. Chronic therapy, because see, if you are a diabetic, whether there is pandemic, whether there is holiday or not, he will take his tablet every day.
Absolutely.
Some of the other he will manage. Same holds true for antihypertensive. So same holds true for a patient of schizophrenia or bipolar, or depression or anxiety. But acute therapy was postponed, and infection was postponed, pain was postponed, and moreover, the doctors were only available online, So online platform was not available to all poor people, So there was difficulty in getting contacts. But chronic therapy has grown. Acute therapy has been affected.
And the question was actually posed by Mr. Ramnath Pai, and he further, adds that with 75% private players and innovators banned prescribe, and 300% increased price of drugs as compared to other countries, has the affordability been impacted or not, or people are, still finding ways to pay? Is it true that the 300% price have increased in Philippines?
No,
not possible, I guess.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
we have not increased price on any product. My prices are the same which were there in 2019, 2018, 17, 16. We have not increased price on any product. In fact, some companies have reduced the prices here.
Yeah, correct.
Prices, as such, I think, as was confirmed by Saurabh also, prices are high in Philippines.
Absolutely.
Prices of Philippines were compared to Japan. But in the last 10, 15 years, because of the cheap medicine bill, because of the socio-economic condition, the prices have come down because the generic growth has been incredible. So prices have come down. How can there be an increase of 300% price?
There has to be, could be a zero had been by mistake added. 30% could be still a distinct possibility.
Ashish, I think it has been perceived that the prices have increased 300%. Actually, it is a comparison that if in India something is of 100 rupees, we can expect that the same product to be of 400 rupees.
Maybe then there is a confusion in the
yes. I guess this is it has been misinterpreted.
Saurabh has rightly understood. It possibly is that, everybody knows, so if you sell a product of 10 rupees in India, it is sold at 30 and 40 rupees in Philippines. That's known to everybody.
And then there is no question of affordability, because Philippines has been paying for this for years together.
Yes.
That is like that. Yeah. I guess, KD sir, you have a big fan following, because a lot of people are thanking your session. Maybe I'll name some few. Parashuram Dash says that congratulations, KD sir, nice to see you again. Then Abid Hussain, I told you, Manku is saying, good to see you after long back, KD sir. Kota Kota Anand Rao is saying big thanks to you. Vishal Chandra is thanking you from Germany. Then VV Ashok says that it was a very, very beautiful and a detailed presentation by both Prats and KD. I am just forgetting if I have met someone. Amitesh Mishra is there who has saying, a big thanks. I am seeing that people from domestic background also are keen to listen to you and understand, which is a very, very, insightful thing and a great, platform LPC is developing, that where people are showing a lot of curiousness and intrigueness to learn from this. So over to you, Raman.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, sir. So we'll go at the last part of today's discussion.
Well, we are well in time actually.
Yeah. Hope this is the visible to all of you. Correct.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now, yeah, we have come to the end of today's live pharma coalition LPC-68 global session on a topic of the Philippines, the country of 7107 islands. And thank you that the LPC platform for giving this opportunity to be taken care of the start as well as the last part. That is the word of thanks. Instead of saying thanks, I will like to say all the best to all the speaker. Their journey is started on the LPC learning and sharing platform. Very nice, informative and practical day-to-day experience sessions by our speaker. Great, well planned, time bounds show run by our both the panelists and our co-moderators. I would like to say all the best to all the live audience and the viewers from the Facebook audience and the viewer. Keep liking and following the LPC Facebook page and YouTube audience, that is the viewer. Please do the subscribe over the LPC YouTube channel. And lastly, be a LPC mentor program registered members, and you can just text onto for the getting the more informations about it onto 9769681520. And here like we will end today's. Thank you so much to all the speakers.
Thank you so much,
So-
KD.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.
Good day. Good day to everyone.